On this Word Cassette Library tape, you will hear two presentations by Dr. Elton Trueblood, professor at large at Earlham College in Richmond, Virginia, and president of Yokefellow Associates. On this first side, you will hear his exposition of 1 Peter 3:15 as it was presented at the Houston Conference on the Church. The title, A Reason for the Hope That Is Within You.
I think that the main evidence that we are in a new time, a crucial time, an opening time, is to be found not merely in political events, but chiefly in intellectual and spiritual development. What do we have? We have on the part of millions an agonizing sense of need. This is why we have the drug menace. We know why people take drugs. They take drugs because their lives are spiritually empty. Jesus said, "The house that is empty will not remain empty." There is the law, the spiritual law, which makes a vacuum impossible. We call this a conference on meaning and belonging. If people do not find meaning one way, they will find it another, and perhaps in an illicit way. If they do not belong to a redemptive fellowship, they will belong probably to a destructive fellowship. These needs have to be met. And how this raises the responsibility of every person in this company. We see the bankruptcy of humanism, mere humanism. It would take a good deal of nerve for anybody now to say, man is rising by his own power out of the dust into perfection and so forth. It's clear nonsense. And everybody knows that it is. And those hopes have turned out to be idle hopes. And as for Marxism, it hasn't been able to produce. It has produced some big nations and big power, as in the case of the Soviets and of mainland China. But the brave new world they talked about has not come to pass. The promises simply have not materialized. This is what gives us our opportunity. The Christian faith has, I believe, a magnificent opportunity now, more than any that I have known in my lifetime, to take advantage of the need, the searching, the hopes, and give an answer that is true. And this is what dignifies the lives of all of us, inadequate and unworthy as we may be. It is a time then for Christian statesmanship. There aren't many acknowledged Christian statesmen alive today. We have lost so many. One whom I greatly honor is Bishop Stephen Neal. I believe he is the most reliable Christian statesman whom I know and who is now alive and working. He was in our country a few months ago and may come back. And he supported this same analysis that the half-gods have failed And this is why there is an opportunity for those who know anything about the living God to say what they know. This is not a sermon, but it has a text. Most of you are literate enough to know from the title that I gave what the text is. It is 1 Peter 3:15, one of the truly golden texts. John Bailey was the first man that ever drew this to my attention, and I've been immensely grateful to him for this and so many other things about his marvelous life. Here are the words. Always be prepared to give a reason to anyone who asks you about the hope that is in you. But do it with gentleness and reverence. What I'm really making here is a call for Christian intellectuals. Our people are so searching, so confused, so uncertain. They are waiting for people who can give them something with clarity and with conviction that will answer the deepest needs of their lives. And I suppose that there are more people gathered in one room right now who ought to be able to perform this function than have been gathered for a long, long time. You may think of yourself in a modest way, but let me do all I can to raise your sights about your own vocation. Make clear to people that you cannot possibly avoid the importance of belief. Now, in the recent past, we have played down belief. On Sunday, I talked to a grown man, about 45 years of age, who said that until recently he had never heard one sermon about prayer. The whole idea that prayer can be real, that there can be a genuine contact between the finite person and the infinite person, that it can make a difference, that prayer can be a force, that it can change events. He said never in his life had he ever heard a sermon on that subject. What shocks me is the way in which we avoid the big subjects. I say to you men who are pastors, tackle the big ones. A good many have asked me why I've given so much time lately to the thinking of Abraham Lincoln. I'm calling the book, when it comes out on his birthday, Abraham Lincoln, Theologian of American Anguish. And I hope that that has a contemporary ring. He lived in a divided time and tried to love God in a divided time. And we are in a divided time. I think it is highly pertinent. And each one who asks me this gets this answer from me: why not go after the big ones? We all know who the greatest American is. Why not soak yourself in greatness? It's too late to give your whole time to the trivial. It is your task, dear friends, to help these muddled, searching people to have meaning. That's what this conference is for. Human beings are very tough. We can bear very hard things, and I'm sure there are people within the sound of my voice who have had terrible sorrows and burdens. I know that some of you have had very bad illnesses, for example. And therefore you know that human beings can suffer pain, privation, illness. The one thing that human beings cannot bear very long is meaninglessness. And it makes no difference whether they are poor or affluent. Without a sense of meaning, their lives go to pieces. And I'm sure that when the managers of this conference set the topic, that it was precisely this that they had in mind. The people want something firm. It is not enough merely for you to give them back their questions. Of course, nobody here claims to know the whole truth, because we are finite. But it would be foolish for us to be what we are unless there were some things that were really clear in our minds. And I want to tell you tonight what is clear in my mind and what gives me strength to go on and to try to reach these people whom I see everywhere I go. The central idea is this: find one center of certitude. You don't need but one. But if you have one, you can proceed. It has been my professional job for many years to teach philosophy, especially Greek philosophy. And very early I began to think about Archimedes, who was a thinker and a great mathematician, as all of you know. And I was so struck by his most frequently repeated aphorism. You probably all learned it, even in high school. He invented the lever. Before him, no man could lift very much. But after Archimedes, a man could lift that piano. All he had to do was to have a fulcrum, a solid point, with a bar, and put the weight on the short end of the bar, and he would operate the long end of the bar, and he would seem to be able to do anything. And so you will remember the king of Syracuse said, "Archimedes, how much can you lift?" And he answered, "If you give me a place to stand, I can lift the whole world." What I have come to Houston chiefly to say is this: your task is, first of all, to have a place yourself that is firm, and then be able to interpret that in such a way that it will be firm for the other people who are so struggling. My central conviction, the one thing of which I am more sure than any other, is the trustworthiness of Jesus Christ. That's why I'm so glad that Ken sang "Jesu, joy of man's desiring." I look at all that I can see in the world. I study astronomy. I try to learn ancient history and anthropology and all these other studies. And there are many things we don't know. What we know is just the tiniest little fringe on the edge of the ultimate mystery. And we shall never know. As long as we are in this finite predicament, we don't know very much. And it's good for us to know our humility and to recognize that we need all the help that we can possibly get. But we belong to a tradition of saints, that is, common people like us who have been committed. That's what a saint is. Who have found a center of stability and have proved it in their lives. This is the way to give a reason for the hope that is in you. See its effects. See how it has brought order. See how it has brought compassion. See how it has brought a sense of belonging to so many lives. All of this came to me so vividly on the 24th of May. I was in London, and I walked up that famous street, Aldersgate, that goes straight north of St. Paul's. And I knew that on that day in 1738, John Wesley had had a change in his life that was absolutely revolutionary. All of his life up to that time was a failure. His life after that was victorious and glorious, and many of you in this company would not be here if it had not been for what came in his new message. And the message was this: he came to know Jesus Christ personally. Not the knowledge by description, but the knowledge by acquaintance. And he never faltered. He had suddenly had all of the elements of his life brought together in a new unity. And this had many effects. We talk a great deal today about the social gospel. Look at the tremendous effects that this had. So many indeed that it is often said that because of Wesley, England did not have the violence of the French Revolution that came toward the end of the 18th century. Because the changes in human justice as a result of this new experience of Christ were so tremendous. The glory of this view is that you hold together two parts that must not be divided. The inner life of conviction and devotion and the outer life of service. And then if you can add to those a third one, so that you have three bases, the third one being that of the intellect, then you have something of tremendous power. The Christian is not called to just one thing. He is called to a magnitude. He is called to pray, to serve, and to think. And if ever we have just one of these without the others, we always fail. Part of the reason for the hope that is in you is found in the evidence that if you have those together and you see all of these as essential to the gospel, then there do come to be rich, glorious, stable lives, not for our own sakes, but chiefly in developing the powers and the gifts and the opportunities and the hopes of other people. And so I begin with the reason for the hope that is in me, with my central certitude. I believe in Jesus Christ. But look at the logic of it. If you believe in Him as your starting point, then you have to believe in the living God. For he said that he revealed him. I wish you would be able to make people see the glory of the idea that we believe that God is like Christ. That is true. That is good news. If Christ is right, God is not some impersonal force, abstraction, some law. He is a person who loves you and who can be loved in turn, and who knows and cares and has a purpose for your life. I have many reasons for believing in the living God, but the most powerful reason I have is that which comes through Christ. This is what we mean by saying we believe in God through Christ. And nearly all that I know about God, I know not on my own, but through him. But the logic goes farther. If Christ is trustworthy, then prayer is real. He prayed. He prayed all night long before he chose the 12. And everybody knows that his last words on the cross were words of prayer, quoted from the Psalms, Father, into thy hands I commit my spirit. We know that he prayed for others. He said, Simon, Simon, I have prayed for thee, that thy faith might not fail. Now the logic is this. Either prayer is real or Christ was wrong. There is no third possibility. I believe that you are men and women who believe that Christ was right and is right. That he not only lived, but that he lives. I believe that it is his presence that is in the midst. I believe that he has guided me as I have struggled for months to know what I ought to say here tonight. And I believe he can guide you and does guide you and will be with you when you go. Here is a big faith. This is magnitude. This makes sense. This can be defended. This is not irrationalism. This is not a denial of the intellect. This is a use of the intellect. It's a wonderful thing to realize that in all the centuries, the Christian community has been able to raise up powerful men to give a reason for the hope that is in them. We do not need to be ashamed of them. You can give the names as well as anybody. And we've had some very great ones in our generation. Think what a wonderful thing it is to have lived in the same century with William Temple and Stephen Neal and Karl Barth and Emma Bruner and John Bailey and C.S. Lewis and J.B. Phillips and on and on. We've had these great, powerful, masculine minds, tough-minded, not running away from the problems, but facing them with absolute tough-mindedness at every point. And what I hope is that there will be people like this come out of the conference on meaning and belonging. Why not? Why not you? You may have a far greater vocation than you've ever dreamed. You'll have to think. You'll have to read. You'll have to learn from the best minds that there have ever been. But you can. As a very young man, Abraham Lincoln was asked, "What is the greatest invention of the world?" And without a moment's hesitation, he said, "The greatest invention of the world is the written language. Because by means of it, we can bridge the chasms of the centuries and of geography, and we can be close to people who lived long ago and people who are now alive and far away. The wonder of the written word is that it opens up the whole world to you. Nobody can stop you from knowing very well the Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis. Nobody can keep you from sinking your mind into the pensées of Blaise Pascal. These powerful Christian men are ready to help us. 500 years later, or 300 years later, it makes no difference at all. And we can begin to be part of this fellowship of verification. To this we are called. And by this, we shall be obedient to the words. Always be ready to give a reason to anyone who asks you about the hope that is in you. But do it with gentleness and with reverence.
This is the end of side one. Turn the cassette over to hear the second message on this word cassette library tape by Elton Trueblood.